Hi, hello those of you of the Dash Incubator community that are interested in working on the Trello to GitHub Projects beta migration. This is the ETL script, meaning the export, transform, and load script that's written in Node.js. And what this will do is it will take cards that are in Trello, such as this one. So this is a card. So if we go here, Incubator on GitHub, this card has, you'll notice a description. It has some custom fields. It also has task lists, which each have tasks. Tasks have a number and an amount of dash. And a card may have multiple task lists that these will eventually be converted into labels, and multiple tasks that may be completed or uncompleted. So the goal is to get each of these tasks converted into an issue, as well as an issue for the entire card, where the issue basically mirrors the card. It has the description and it has the task checked, and that the tasks, certain information about the task, such as the amount of dash or possibly other metadata, are represented in GitHub Projects. So first, let's take a look at a particular issue. If I can bring one of those back up here. So that is a project. And then we could look at a specific issue. Okay, so let me do this. So here, if I'm not mistaken, this is not the same one. Let me look for GitHub Incubator. There we go. So this card is the one that I just showed you. And you can see that there's a number of tasks that have been checked off. You'll notice that some of these have been parsed and some of them have not been parsed. Basically all the ones that have, this is not the one Incubator on GitHub. Here we go. So the ones that were closed have not been reparsed. The ones that are still open have been reparsed. And okay, yeah. So there's the description is right there. This is what issue is imported from. These are the task lists. These are the tasks. And if we were to look into the test migration project, we would be able to see, I could probably search for this. We can search for Incubator on GitHub. That may have been moved while the test projects were being created. Incubator. Let's see. This is being tracked. Where does it say what this is linked to? Linked issues. I have to check that out. Anyway, but you see the basic structure that the individual tasks, the baby tasks, are issues, as well as the card itself is an issue, and it can all be tracked here, and information about it can be put into these fields. So that's the high-level overview. Now, as far as the code goes, what you'll need to do is you'll need to have Node.js. You'll need to have a personal access token on GitHub. You'll need to clone the project, go into the directory, do the npm install. You'll need to copy the example.env and flavor it to taste. And we'll go over that in just a second. You'll need to create your own board file, which board.json file, which we'll go over, as well as your member.json file. All of that we'll go over. And when you want to run the project to actually do the load on either the test or the production dash GitHub organization and dash GitHub project, you can just run node etl. So if you're trying to do the load, that's how you do it. If you are trying to develop it, we're going to get into that in just a second. So here with the setup, the first thing is you need to set up your .env, your GitHub token. You're going to get that from this URL, the GitHub tokens URL. The GitHub project is going to be a number, and that is going to be the number that is in the URL of the project that's created. So for example, here, projects 2, the number is 2. The GitHub dash field, you will only be able to get once you already have your GitHub token set in the env. And the way to get that is to run the node utils git GitHub project fields. And when you do that, you'll get back a list of project fields, some of which are custom fields and some of which are not. So for example, Trello type and Dash, these are custom fields. Now, Whoops, wrong thing. Whoop. Let's get back to this. The board.json is the Trello export. It's the entire Trello board. Actually, I think it's the Trello organization export. So you would go to a particular board, such as the Dash Incubator board, which is exactly what you would do for this specific use case. You'd go to Show Menu, which I can kind of go through this. I don't know if I want to take the time to go through it. I will. So I'll just show you because this is a little bit weird, the way that it's set up. So there's a Show Menu, and then there's a Back button. And then once you hit the Back button, there's a More. And then once you hit More, then there's a Print and Export. So it's a little bit layered, but that's where it is, and that gives you a zip file. That zip file will contain a couple of board.json files, or JSON files that represent a board. So the general structure is like this. There will be a boards folder, and then it'll have an example board, the welcome board, maybe a couple of other junk boards, and then the main board that you're looking for, and it'll have .json will be the end of it. So once you've extracted the zip file and found the particular file you're looking for, you just need to rename it to boards.json in the project directory. Now, members.json, you need to create yourself, but what you can do is you can do get member info. There we are. And you can find the Trello username and then basically just copy that. So say I wanted these two people. You can copy that. And then you can create a JSON file that has that information. You just need to substitute out what their Trello username is for their GitHub username without any prefix. And that will allow the assignments to carry over when things are published. Now, as far as using this as an API and kind of understanding it, here's how the code is structured. There are 3 main files. There's the ETL file that's the most high level and in some ways the most complex because it's what iterates over all of the card objects and all the checklist objects and all of the item objects all the way down to the tasks, and then will upsert them, meaning it will check. There's a local cache that it uses to check to see if it can relate a Trello card or task ID with a GitHub issue ID. So that is locally cached. If you start the process on a computer, you need to finish the process on that same computer. Otherwise, if you were to start it somewhere else, there would be no cache. It would not know how to relate the issues together. And so it would just create new issues for every card. It would start the process over. So there is no way to fetch the issue and well, I guess maybe we could put metadata on the issue, such as the Trello ID. That might not be a bad idea. That might be something that we want to do, but I don't know if that would really be worth it. But something we certainly, it's potentially, potentially we could do it. I don't think it'd be worth it. Anyway, point being, there's a layer of caching that happens. So the card will get upserted, which that will loop over checklists. It will upsert each checklist. That will loop over checklist items. It will upsert each checklist. Upsert each checklist item. And there is some sleep logic in there. So again, you don't have to write this code yourself just to run it. You can run node etl.js, but this is an example of how you would use etl.js as a module if you wanted to run it yourself. But with your own code. But these are the functions. Again, this is all the high-level business logic of interfacing with GitHub. Now there is this is a little bit lower level. There's a GitHub module lib gh.js. This has both REST API and GraphQL API stuff in it. It handles the API backoff, exponential backoff, when you hit rate limits, which you will do if there's thousands of cards that are going to be created, which there will be, or even if there's several hundred, which there will be. I will go into this for just a moment, just to kind of show the way that this works. So here's our GitHub bit here. I guess we don't need that there. Let me see, .env. Is this already done? This should be done at the top level. Whatever. That's okay for now. Forget I said that. Okay, so it's going to pull the GitHub token, the GitHub org, and the GitHub repo. And the GitHub org is going to either be -evo or -testing. The GitHub repo is going to be whatever repo you are testing on, or the production project repo, whatever that ends up being called. And then base URL is just, of course, the GitHub API. This request function is what handles the backoff. It handles the authentication token. It just handles the bits that need to be handled for any request to succeed with GitHub. And then we have just the simple way of creating an issue. This is referenced in the README. The API for this, or the documentation for this REST API is referenced in the README. So let me just bring that up to show you real quick. It's down here at the bottom. REST API, and then the GraphQL API, as well as some learning resources as well. So if you want to add more things to the REST API, just follow this pattern. Just copy and paste. And the way that it is used is the URL, the body, if there is any body, and then the method, if the method is something other than get or post. Get is the default, post is the default if there's a body. Then with GraphQL, well, GraphQL has its own quirks, so this takes a little bit more learning to do, but this is basically what you copy and paste. So you can create a GraphQL query, pass in the template variables. So you can see here the template variables are being referenced. So you just kind of got to look through the GraphQL API on GitHub or find a GraphQL Explorer to get the autocompletes. But once you have the string for your query, you just pass in your variables like so. And yeah, you just, it's kind of a little bit more tedious sometimes to figure it out, but that's what you copy and paste and work through. So not as simple as the REST API, but yeah, we do what we need to do. Yeah. Oh, and then there's also set dash amount. So this is an example of how to set a custom field right here. Yeah, and then we just have our sleep. So that's that. I'm not going to go into that too much. I'll go into the ETL last because it is the most complex, the most difficult to just kind of look at a glance. So then we have our transform. So this is the third part. The transform is basically in 3 parts. So there's parsers, there's object mappers, and then there is, technically it's a renderer, but I still called it map. So parse, for example, takes the checklist, which looks like, let's see if we can just bring this back up here for a second. So you notice there's a number in front, there's an amount of dash, there are some special tags such as job task. So that doesn't exist yet. We don't parse that out yet, but you'll notice when they go into issues, if they are issues that were created after the fact, because a lot of these that are closed, notice the closed issues have not been updated because we didn't want to spend the extra cycles and wait the extra hours to go back and update things that have already been closed. But you'll notice that this, the number 1 has been parsed out, the amount of dash has been parsed out. But if we were to look at review existing, let's go over to our project board. Let's just look for review existing, Trello to database migration. So if we look at this, notice that there's a bounty right there. So that was parsed out. And notice that this is trimmed quite a bit. There's a ... and then the rest of it is right here. So the point of that being is that the parse checklist item is where that logic will grow. It's where it is currently, and it's where it will grow. The map card to issue is very simple. It's just taking an object that is kind of in the Trello style plus the things that we've added in the parse phase, and potentially some things we've added from the GitHub issue, but it's the combined item we're mapping from the Trello style to the GitHub style. And same thing with map checklist item to issue. We're just mapping it from the way that it is in Trello to the way that we need it to be able to upsert it on GitHub issues and GitHub projects beta. And then map card issue to markdown is really rendering from the whole card including all of its checklists and everything, to the Markdown. So I will go over that code very briefly. So let's just start at the top here. There's some regular expressions that's actually tested in the test file. So here's our parse checklist item. And as you can see, it's just lots of small transformations. These could potentially, should potentially be broken down into their own functions so that this is maybe a little easier to read. But it's how we are attaching our title and our description and our amount and all of these things onto this item, which is a Trello object. So the underscore things are things that we're adding for us. Could have potentially added another property onto it that is a Dash metadata property or GitHub metadata property or something like that, but this is how I chose to do it. And then the item is returned with these extra properties on it. Same thing, map card to issue. We take card.name becomes title, the body becomes what we've created out of the body, assignees becomes what we map from the members JSON, and so on and so forth. Checklist to item issue, the same, just mapping it to the GitHub style. And then here, this function is producing Markdown that looks like this. That's the ultimate goal. So it has a couple of children functions, but they all roll up into producing this as the output. So if we go down, this handles just the checklist part. So this is the whole card part. This is just the checklist part that gets rolled up into that. And then this is just the item, the checklist item part that gets rolled up into what you saw previously. So lastly, we will go over the ETL. I'll just start at the top here. This is where all the caching and storage is handled. This is where we're requiring our transform and our GitHub. And then these are our upsert, our 3 upsert methods. This is fairly complex. There's a lot of debug info that's printed out. And there's some caching. Basically, the way the caching layer works, I'm back at the top of the file now, is that I just increment for different stages. So if I need to change the way that the transform is, I just add another one of these and then increment the number of the basically the version of the transform. And so then in that, the part of the code that needs that transform, so let's go here to mlist, I say if the card meta, this is what represents the relationship between the Trello card and then how it is placed on the GitHub issue and the GitHub project. If its migration is less than mlists, then it's going to run this. So basically, as I'm adding more things, I'm just going to be changing what the minimum migration is as I'm adding different functions, if that, hopefully that makes sense. Then same thing for these other bits. Again, it's just a lot of business logic in here. It would be great to add some more comments in here, pull some of the stuff out into smaller functions, but it is what it is right now. One function to note is that we do actually need Trello and GitHub information combined as we're going through some of these transform steps. So at the smallest layer, the check item issue is attached, or the issue for the check item is attached to the check item right here. I think that is it.